My name is Ken Lewicki of channelinginc.com. Welcome to the Ask Ken show. If you want to know more about what I do for a living, I teach people how to channel and do all sorts of amazing healings that I also do. I have access to over 100 different healings that I do full time. And the way that the Ask Ken show works is really simple. When you're watching this live feed, you could ask any questions, and what I will do is I will live channel the answers right on the spot in the moment. I do this for a number of reasons. One is to emulate for my students what they can do. So I do channeling training, which means I have full certification workshops training, and you can learn how to channel. You can learn how to do this on the spot, in the moment, anywhere, anytime, any situation, any environment, and where it becomes just an everyday part of your life. Like, how exciting is that, and being able to peel back the veil and understand what's going on the other side, and be able to access that other side and do amazing things with what's going on the other side, and your spirit guides. And eventually in some of my workshops, later in my workshops, I teach like sprites, how to channel sprites, fairies, dragons, angels, crystal divas, all that cool stuff. So this is the Ask Ken show. Welcome. I am going to start with the first question of the day, which is, how can I heal my lineage without permission? Okay, so this question is actually a really good question, because I also do a whole bunch of healing modalities on my students in my one-on-ones and in my classes. I also teach healing training in my later workshops, plus in my one-on-one, my 6-month mentorship program after you've taken my workshops. And I do that purposely because I want to be able to people have the foundation to be able to know how to channel, so that they're checking what they're doing. They're actually verifying that what they think they're doing is actually working and all that good stuff. So how can I heal my lineage without permission? That's a great question. And the reason why this question is asked, because if I'm healing my parents, grandparents, great grandparents, and so on, how am I doing this without permission? Like, I don't have to get their permission. And the answer is no. And here's why, is because I'm actually, when I do healing on people's lineage, I'm not actually healing the parents and grandparents. I'm actually healing that person who has the ancestral genes and cycles and patterns that have been imprinted into that person. So that's what I'm actually doing. Anytime I'm doing, let's say, for example, somebody is struggling with their ex, whatever's going on with their ex. So what I do is I tell them, I say, okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do healing around your ex. So not on your ex, because they're not in front of me. They haven't given me explicit permission. But what I will do is I will do healing on you in regards to your ex. So the same thing with lineage and ancestral healing is, when I do ancestral healing, I'm actually not healing those other people in your ancestors. I'm actually healing you in regard to your ancestors, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm doing when I do the healing with ancestral healing. And then one of the things that's really, really important with channeling is permissions. So we have to always check permissions. We have to always check to make sure that the person, if we're doing a reading on them, we get permission from them. How do you do this? You check with your spirit guides, and then you also check with their spirit guides. This is what I cover in my channeling level 2 workshops, where I teach people how to do spirit guide readings, loved one readings, like mediumship and things like that. Is always check permission first. And the reason why is because what happened with me is, when I first started learning how to figure this out, I would be doing like these amazing readings at these expos and one-on-ones, and everything was going fine. But every once in a while, about 1 in 10 people, I would really struggle with. I'm like, why am I feel like I'm going through sludge trying to get these answers, or it's just not flowing, or I feel like I'm hitting like a block or something like that. And the reason why it took me years to figure this out, it took me about 5 years to figure it out, is that the reason why is because I didn't actually have permission. And so permission is very, very, very important. And most people, they come to you and they give you implicit permission. Implied means implicit, means implied. Basically, they've sat down, they're ready for a reading, they want a reading, all that. But even sometimes I found that when some people give implicit permission, it doesn't mean the permission has actually worked. And so sometimes what you need to do is ask explicit permission. And so let's say when it comes to healing, let's say somebody comes to me and says, well, I have my daughter, and my daughter wants my daughter's struggling with this ailment or whatever, she's sick, or it could be whatever, like a number of different things. Can you heal my daughter? Guess what my answer is? No. And here's why: because her daughter has not given explicit permission. If her daughter is there and wants healing and asks for it explicitly, that's fine. Or if she wants to book a separate session, that's fine. Or in my Ascension Group Healing, if she's there and wants to participate in the healing, that's fine. But I will not override her permission and give her by giving her healing without her explicitly giving me permission. So permission is very important. Please, please, please check this. People do have free will. Another reason why I'm also very adamant about permission is, let's say somebody comes to me and goes, "Oh, my husband's being a jerk. Can you do healing on him?" I'm like, okay, so what if I say yes, and I do actually do healing on him, and then the wife or girlfriend or whatever goes and tells him, "Oh, guess what? This Ken guy did healing on you," and he's like, "Well, what do you mean he did healing on me? Who is this Ken guy? Why is he doing healing on me? Like, I didn't give him permission. Like, what does he think?" And then that could come back. He could be messaging me or give me a bad review, like, this Ken guy did healing on me without me, without asking me, all that other stuff. So I don't want to get into that. I tell that person, I say, if your boyfriend or husband wants healing, send them to me. They could book a session with me, and then I will do healing on them. But they're not here right now. You're here right now. Let's do healing on you in regard to him. What is it about him that bothers you? Good. Let's heal that. What else about him bothers you? Good. Let's heal that. That's not always the answer that the person wants to heal. They're like, no, I just want him to change so I feel better. No, let's heal you. And then by healing you, then whatever, ideally. So there's this great saying out there that says, if there's no enemy within, then the enemy outside could do us no harm. And basically, the way that I interpret that is that I eventually want to get to a point in my journey where it doesn't matter what happens externally, that if when I'm healed, there's no enemy within, it doesn't matter what's going on outside of me, I'm fine and it doesn't bother me. And that's a really, really important point about healing, is taking ownership and realizing that, let's say my boyfriend or ex or whatever is bothering me or upsetting me. Okay, but what is it about them that's bothering you? Let's own it, take ownership, and heal and work on that. And there's a couple of reasons why, is because the first obvious one is that it's your trigger, it's your button. And if you keep trying to get other people, external people, to change to suit you, it's not going to work. And the bigger reason is because whether you stay together or not, or stay in contact or not, you still have this trigger, you still have this button. And so let's heal it once and for all within, so that next relationship, if you decide to move on or you part ways, then at least you've worked on that part of the healing and it doesn't carry over into that next relationship. So that's where taking ownership is really important. But I will not do healing on third-party people. That is a hard no, and that is overriding people's explicit permission. And that also includes with lineage. I'm not going to heal your mother or your grandparents without their explicit permission, but I will heal you, your lineage within you, through your ancestral. And your DNA healing is different than lineage healing. It's actually two separate things, but oftentimes they're correlated. So oftentimes I'll check to see if I need to do one or the other or both. And then sometimes I do some actual DNA upgrading, which is actually really cool as well, and do some healing on the telomeres and other parts of the DNA as well. So this is the Ask Ken Show. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, two things. If you are watching this, please say your name and where you're from. I will give you a shout out. And the second thing is, if you have any questions, I will live channel the answers. So go ahead and ask any spiritual questions, any questions about channeling, spirit guides, anything like that. Whatever is coming to you, just ask it and type it in, the question, in the comments there, and I will see the comments and answer the question. All right, let's move on to our next question is, how do I attract clients? Okay, so there's the bottom line is you have to do the work. For those of you who have a business or think about starting a business or anything like that, please, 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 what I want you to do is two things. Is how do I attract clients? So this is basically the law of manifestation, the law of attraction, and basically what I want you to do is really focus on raising your vibration. I know it sounds simple, but let me give you some real practical tips on this. So what I just talked about doing your healing and clearing, because when happens is when we're in pain and we're struggling, we like pain attracts like-minded people. When I'm suffering and struggling all that all the time, and it's constant, and I'm in this lower vibration, guess who I'm going to attract? More of these lower kind of vibration situations, people, circumstances, things like that, because I'm in this lower vibration. And then, but as I do my healing and clearing and I'm getting healthier, then I raise my vibration and I attract more of these higher vibration situations, people into my life, into my sphere, things like that. It doesn't mean that I don't once in a while random kind of sporadic person or situation comes up that's negative or whatever. But I've found for me that it's a lot less frequent and it's a lot less detrimental. And I don't, it doesn't drag me down as much and as far. So that's the really important thing about how do I attract clients, is raising your vibration, and you're going to attract these really high quality, high kind of vibration kind of clients to you. And then the other thing is you have to actually put yourself out there. I know it's not what a lot of people want to hear, but putting yourself out there. So think of it like me, like way back in the day, I was always concerned, like what are people going to think about me? You know, I'm channeling, doing this woo woo kind of stuff and all that. And, you know, I just made a decision. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. So what? This is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. I really want to help people, and I want to help people in this capacity, and I want to help them to a really big capacity, not just a little bit. And if I play small and I stay hidden in the closet, worrying about what other people will think, there's two things with that. One is I don't want to go to my deathbed having any regrets. I don't want to be, laying there on my deathbed going, oh, I wish I would have actually put myself out there. I wish I would have, told people what I'm really passionate about and how I really want to help people. And I don't want to be like, oh, I hid all this spiritual stuff about me and spiritual abilities and my spiritual passions because I was afraid that, what my family might think, or my boyfriend, or my in-laws or outlaws, or whoever, my worker coworkers and things like that. And I just got to a point, I'm like, I don't care. This is what I do. I'm passionate about it. I love it. And this is something that's really important to me. And think of it this way. You have amazing talents and gifts. If you're watching this, you do. Everyone does. And if you keep this because you're so worried about what other people think, you're actually robbing the people who want you and need you and could really utilize your services from actually benefiting from them. So you're actually doing them a disservice. If I didn't do these Ask Ken shows and all my other workshops and trainings that I do, think of all the thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that I've been able to bless with my abilities and skills that I've been able to help them learn how to channel, and all the healings that I've done on people over the years and decades now. And that's what I want to encourage for you. So if you're kind of on the fence or hesitating about this, please just put yourself out there and go for it. Really go for it. Put yourself out there, take a risk. And what I found, not just with me, but also with hundreds, if not more, of my clients, is that the ones that were afraid to put themselves out there because they're afraid of the blowback and all this being chastised and put down and made fun of and all that stuff, I found pretty much every single time that never happens. Never. You might get the odd random person, but who cares? That's not your target audience. That's not who you're trying to target. They're not your target clientele. The people that need you and want your services will find you, but you got to put yourself out there. And that means whatever it takes, like social media. I do these live videos on purpose to put myself out there. Just do whatever you have to do to put yourself out there. And I talk with people in public all the time about what I do. I just was in another city recently, and I told dozens of people, hey, what do you do for a living? And I go, well, I teach people how to channel. They're like, channel, what's that? And then I started going into it, and they're like, wow, that's really cool. I want to learn how to do that. I'm like, okay, this is how you get in touch with me. And then, but if I kept that to myself, I wouldn't be able to bless them with my services. So if you're watching this is the Ask Ken show. Write your name, where you're from, and say hi. So we got Julie tuning in. Woo, woo. Hey, Julie, welcome, welcome, welcome. And the Grace is from Perth. She's awesome. She's done a lot of my channeling workshops. She's phenomenal. Love working with her. Hi, Grace. And Julie as well has taken some of my workshops, and she's Canadian but living in Bali, which is really cool. So if you're watching this, please say hi. If you have any questions, type in your questions in the chat message there, and I will live channel the answers. This is the Ask Ken Show. Let's move on to our next question. Is how can yeah, I'm gonna do this one. When incarnating, do we have different entrance points where we can incarnate and who we can incarnate with? So basically, the answer is yes. And what this means is, let's say, for example, so you have to remember that we talked about free will. This is perfect because all the stuff I talked about earlier in the Ask Ken show and in this episode is actually relevant to what I'm going to cover now because it goes with permissions and it goes with free will. And these are really important. So what happens is before we incarnate in the astral realm, we reside with our soul family. And then as we're prepping to incarnate, we work with ascended masters in our soul family. So not necessarily like the Jesuses and the Buddhas, but other ascended masters. We may not know them as from history and humans, but and anyways, we work with these higher level souls who are very basically high level souls who are very evolved, and they help us before we incarnate to decide on what I call like a rough blueprint. And that a rough blueprint, the reason why I call it a rough blueprint is because it gives it, when we incarnate, we have different paths and options on this blueprint that we can go down. And because when we incarnate, we have free will, we can make different decisions. But it not just includes our free will, it also includes our parents' free will. So for example, there was a time when my dad, he got a job offer in this big city, and the city was like a lot of gangs, a lot of crime, stuff like that. It was a really good job offer, very lucrative. And he hummed and hawed about it and contemplated it with my mom, his wife, and they eventually decided not to move to that big city. And the reason why is because they didn't want us my brother and I being raised in that environment. But had my dad exercised his free will and decided to move to that other city, I would have had no choice because I was a child at the time, but I would have had no choice but to go with them. And I would have grown up in a totally different environment, totally different life path. So that's where I had no choice for those early years of my life. It was basically my parents' free will that was deciding a lot of the factors for me and stuff like that. And then as an adult, though, I have free will, so I can choose to exercise my free will for the positive, for the good, and do amazing things with that free will. So the question is, do I have different entrance points where and who I incarnate with? And the answer is yes. So what can happen, let's say, for example, I know this might kind of sound a little bit gross, but I'm just going to say it is, let's say your mom and dad are having sex, okay? And then, or want to have sex, but then, for whatever reason, mom decides in that moment, you know what, I don't want to, it's too soon, I want to wait. And then, okay, so then they never did have sex in that moment. But if they had sex, that's where you could have been conceived, but they decided to wait. So then maybe the next time they decided to have sex, and then that's when you were conceived. It might have been a week later, a month later, or so on. So there's a bunch of different variables, factors, like, the sperm and all that other stuff. Like there's a whole bunch of things that could happen. But basically, what happens in the astral realm is before you incarnate is you're kind of observing different potentials is what I call them. So you're kind of deciding on which parents you want to choose, when you want to incarnate, what part of the planet you want to incarnate on. And it's not just an exit point. It's usually like an exit window. It's a range of time frame when you want to incarnate. And so you can also choose another set of parents that you want to incarnate with in that window as well. So it gets very complicated here. And this is where there's a bunch of factors going on. So some of the factors are to do with like your soul, because your soul has incarnated most likely with these people who are incarnated. So for example, my dad is a member of my soul family. He passed away in 2001. He actually taught me how to channel so I could teach others how to channel. and that's where it became. That started in 2004, so 20 years ago now. And my mom, though, my mother, like, I love her. She's awesome. She's amazing, but she's not a member of my soul family. But I utilized my mother to be born through my mother so I could be with my father. But however, there's many situations here. For example, your earth family isn't necessarily the same as your soul family. So, for example, you can choose to incarnate, and you can incarnate into a family. Let's just say it's a family of four. So there's you, and then your parents, and then a brother or sister. So all of them could be a member of your soul family. None of them could be a member of your soul family, or some of them could be a member of your soul family, is the different variations of what could happen. In my case, my father was a member of my soul family, whereas my mother wasn't, and my brother isn't as well. So those two are not. It doesn't make it good or bad, right or wrong. It's just a different kind of relationship. However, this is where the however comes in. I have had past lives with my mother, even though she's not a member of my soul family, and I have had past lives with my brother, even though he's not a member of my soul family. So there's that stuff that's taken into account before you choose to incarnate. And then it gets even more complicated. Then there's also what's called the Akashic Records. So your Akashic Records is like your book of life, but it's not just from this lifetime, it's from all lifetimes. And your book of life has basically anything you've ever felt, anything you've ever thought, any situation, circumstance you've ever been into is written into that book of life, but not just from this lifetime, but from all lifetimes. And that's why you have a whole library, hence the Akashic Records, or your Akashic Records. So each individual has their own individual Akashic Records. Properties can also have Akashic Records. And also there's what's called the Universal Akashic Records. That includes kind of like the collective, if you want to call it that. So the collective Akashic Records. But we're just talking about your own individual Akashic Records for the context of this discussion. And so what happens is when you are choosing to incarnate, what your ascended masters of your soul family are working with you to decide before you incarnate is they're taking into these factors as well as things like past lives that you've had with these potential parents that you're going to choose as parents, and also Akashic Records, contracts, deals, agreements that are either resolved or not resolved, or maybe want to be worked through with some of these individuals, or maybe through it with a sibling or something like that, or a family member like a cousin or an aunt, uncle, niece, nephew that might come along later. Like it can be very sophisticated and complex in that situation. So the answer is yes. Do I have entrance points of when I choose to incarnate? And the answer is yes. Do I also have entrance parents, like different parents that I could choose to incarnate with? The answer is yes. What I encourage everyone to do, can't change the past, it is what it is. Whoever is your parents, just try your best to come to terms with it, be okay with it. Some of you might have had parents where both of them were healthy. That's great. Some of you might have had parents where one of them wasn't so healthy. Okay, it is what it is. Or some of them you just may have had really sucky parents. And what I encourage all my students to do, going back to what I talked about earlier, is take ownership of that. Okay, I can't change who my parents are, who they were, how I was raised. But what I can do is take ownership of what bothers me about that, about what bothers me now as an adult. So I say to my clients, and it's kind of, in case you haven't noticed, I'm pretty straight up with people. And I hope people respect that and appreciate it, is what I say to people is that you can't change what happened to you up until 18. But now that you're an adult, if you're over 18, it's up to you to take responsibility for it. You may have had a crappy childhood. I get it. So did I. Some of it wasn't that great. I had struggled a lot as a child, went through a lot of crap and trauma and stuff like that. But now as an adult, I need to take ownership of that and do as much healing and clearing as I can on that to help myself be healthier from that, and including a lot of mommy issues, daddy issues. That's up to me to take ownership to heal and clear. So I hope that answers that question. That's a really great question and a very complex question. So don't fret or dwell on who your parents are and how you were raised. Instead, just work on what you can do from this point going forward to get healthier and really, take ownership of this life to make an awesome rest of your life, however much time you might have. Okay, so this is the Ask Ken show. And if you're watching, please give a shout out where you're from and your name, and I will say hi to you. And if you have any questions, I will live channel the answers. That's a great question. That last one, that was all live channeled. I was like checking, oh, yeah, okay, multiple parents, yeah, multiple circumstances, yes, multiple entrance points, yes. And it's not just an entrance point, it's an entrance window, which is really cool. All right, let's move on to the next question is how come someone can feel overwhelmed by crowds? What is going on spiritually? Okay, so this is a great question for those of you who are empaths or highly sensitive people. Basically, what an empath is somebody who's highly sensitive um, to environments, situations, circumstances, people's emotions, things like that. Have you ever like walked into a room and you walk in that room and it feels like so thick and heavy and you can almost like cut through the air of that room? That means you're an empath. Do you ever like feel other people's emotions and like it's like really strong where it almost feels overwhelming? That means you're an empath. I would say 80 to 90% of the people that come to me are empaths or highly sensitive people. And not just to be clear, when I channeled and I checked, keep getting about 1 in 10 people are empaths. So it's not like all the whole entire population are empaths, but 1 in 10 is. And there's different variation, different degrees of being an empath. Some are on this end of the spectrum, some are on this other end of the spectrum. So the question is, how come someone can feel overwhelmed by crowds? What's going on spiritually? Okay, so here's the thing. On a spiritual level, let's just talk about you for now. So what can happen is we have protection systems in place, and I say the word systems plural because it's multiple systems. So I've been able to access or identify over 100 different 100 different components that make us up as a human, and what those, not just what those components are, but what their functions are. And so when I say there's multiple aspects plural of you that make up your protection system, it's because there are many of them. There's your chakra system. If your chakra system's not like as healthy as it can be, that can affect your protection system. There's your toroid field, um, your auric field, and on and on and on. There's a bunch of other systems as well, your etheric self and your I am being and a bunch of other systems. So if those aspects of you aren't as healthy as they can be, then you can feel like you're getting bombarded by all this stuff spiritually, other people's energies, all that other stuff. So this is on you. And a lot of my students who are empaths will come to me and go, Ken, how do I turn this off? I don't want to be an empath anymore. It bothers me. It upsets me. I can't stand it. It's overwhelming all this. I'm like, no, no, no. Don't shut it off. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you something different. I'm going to teach you how to embrace it, welcome it, and become what I call a healthy empath, where you're healthy. And yes, you might notice these energies, but instead of them overwhelming you, like as a 8 or 9 out of 10, you'll notice it. It might be a 3 or 4 out of 10, which is a lot easier to manage, but it's not going to like overwhelm you, and you'll be able to use those empath abilities as superpowers and be able to do amazing things with it to help not just yourself but other people as well. So number one thing I recommend is obviously doing healing and clearing. And here's the big reason why is because when you're feeling these energies and they come in, then what happens is if you're all gunked up, like imagine this right now, this is you, and if this is all like gunked up and contaminated and all gross and disgusting, then what happens is when these energies come in, they actually get stuck in the contaminants. But when you do your healing and clearing, then instead what happens is that those energies come in, you feel them, you notice them, but they don't get stuck in you. Instead, they just pass through you. So you're just like, okay, I feel something, I notice something, and it just passes through me, but it doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me an hour later, a week later, a month later. And oftentimes what happens with empaths is that, this bothers them and then that bothers them. And then they're feeling this person's energy and they're going into this environment and that energy. And then it accumulates and accumulates and accumulates until they get overwhelmed and they can't take it anymore. But if you do your healing and clearing, those energies come in and they just keep moving through you. They don't actually stick and get stuck in you. So for example, malls are a great example for empaths. Some empaths really struggle with malls. And for the victim empaths, they'd all be like, yeah, that's me. We're the same. Oh man, I can't stand malls. I can't do this. And I'm like, okay, so there's a group of you. What are you going to do? Go hide in the corner and never go to malls again, or never go to public places again? That's not healthy. And so instead, come here, a group of empaths. Let me teach you how to be healthy empaths, so you can go anywhere, any environment, and any. It doesn't matter where you are. You can go to all these great, amazing places, and you're not worried about, oh no, I need to, you know. Uh, I need to protect myself. I need to, or I can't go to these like I had some people like they can't even go Christmas shopping at Christmas time because they can't go to malls. I'm like, well, that's not very healthy. Like that's very restrictive and constricting. But when you become a healthy empath, then you can go to any place and it won't bother you because you're healthier. Um, Another thing on that note is about the protection. So eventually where I want to get my students is where they don't have to load up on all these different things like these essential oils or crystals and all this other stuff, to think they need protection or do all these like seances and, rituals and stuff like that before they go to the mall or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, just go to the mall, right? Because what I don't want my students to do is live in fear. Like I don't want them to feel like spiritually that they have to always be like, oh, I can't, before I do anything, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to protect myself, I have to do. No, no, no. Just live your life open. Like, and this is the way I live my life. I really do. Like, I live myself open. I don't close down anything. I don't shut down anything. I don't constrict or contract. I don't do anything before I go out in public. I just go. And then if once in a while, like maybe once every few months, I notice something, I just deal with it, and I deal with it on the spot in the moment. That's spiritual stuff like that, and I take care of it in the moment, and then I continue on hanging out and doing what I'm doing, whether it's at the mall or hanging out in public or at events and things like that. So that's where I want to get all my students. I want you to try to change your mentality. Like, what if you know, some people take it way overboard where they think they constantly need to protect themselves before they go to work or go for lunch or something like that. Like it just almost gets ridiculous, and then it becomes what these people do is it creates almost like like it's restrictive. It creates a situation where they feel like they can't do these things, or they can't go into public unless they're wearing these crystals or bracelets or a necklace or certain kind of things like that, or they have to have their crystal, you know they have to load up on crystals before they go anywhere or things like that. It's like, really, do you? um, so there's two factors here, and I want to make it very clear. If you're watching this, you can take notes on this. This is actually a really good point. Is Well, how come some people feel overwhelmed by crowds, and what's going on spiritually? Okay, so on a spiritual level, if it's you, it's your stuff. That's internal. That's what I call internal. It's your triggers, it's what needs healing, it's your protection system, all that stuff we just covered, and more and more. It could be a lot of different things. It could be ancestral things, it could be childhood traumas resurfacing, coming from your subconscious to your consciousness, and it's resurfacing. Maybe you had issues where your mother forced you to go into crowds when you didn't want to, and now you're reliving that. Like it could be a number of those different things. What else could be happening is what's called external. So internal is where it's your own stuff. External is where something spiritual is affecting you externally. So here's a number of different scenarios that could be happening. One is when you're just by yourself, you might get like, there's a bunch of different kinds of souls out there. So the different kinds of souls out there in the astral realm. So these are astral realm souls. They've crossed over. They're of the light. They're healthy. So here's the number of different souls. So there's random souls from the astral realm, random souls, ascended masters. There's loved ones. There's your soul family members, and then there's your spirit guides. So those are the 5 different kinds of souls that could exist, that you could be picking up on, let's say when you go to the mall. Okay, you could be picking up on these kinds of souls. Also, you can be picking up a totally different category is what's called lost souls. So lost souls reside in the in-between realm. There's 3 different realms. There's the astral realm, there's the in-between realm, and there's the animal spirit realm. So we're not talking about the animal spirit realm for this context. We're talking about the the in-between realm. So lost souls can be affecting you as well. But let's take lost souls aside for now, and then I'll come back to it. Why do I feel overwhelmed in crowds? Here's the reason. It could be, again, it could be your own stuff, but the external stuff could also be a contributing factor. So what happens is when we're in public, we could be picking up on all these different kinds of souls as well, and it could be compounded. So for example, let's say you're in a place, and I'm just picking a random number, in a place and there's 50 people there. And it could be like a conference, it could be a get together, it could be an event, it could be a mall, it could be any situation like that. It could be a yoga class, and what's happening is you're not just picking up on you and your spirit guides and loved ones, but you could also be picking up on other people's spirit guides, other people's loved ones, and things like that, plus random souls and all those different kinds of souls we talked about earlier. And that's why some people are like, oh my God, this is so much like spirit stuff going on spiritually. And there is. However, there's nothing to fret. There's nothing to worry about. It's okay. They're of the light. They're on the other side. They're in the astral realm. They might be other people's spirit guides, other people's loved ones. That's totally cool. That's totally fine. But you don't have to let them overwhelm you because of the numbers. Just know that they're of the light and they're fine. And then what I want you to do, and I teach this in my channeling level 2 workshop, is what I call boundaries with souls. So if they're coming to you and yabbering at you and all that, and they might because you're spiritually tuned in, just say, no, not now. I don't want to. I don't do that because I like conversing with souls. I think it's fun. I think it's great. The ones of the light, the ones on the other side, of course, the ones in the astral realm. I don't deal with these ones, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And then what I do though is like, but if I don't feel like it, I'm just not in the mood. I just don't. I'm like, no, go away. I don't want to. And they do. These ones on these 5 different categories of souls, they'll honor that because they're of the light. They won't. They might come to you to one of those. Like there's been times when I'm in a crowd or something like that, and all of a sudden I hear somebody's spirit guides start to talk to me, and I'll check with my spirit guides if I meant to go and talk to that person. I go, hey, can I give you a message? And I give that person a message, and they're like, oh my God. And they're often like crying. They're like, I so needed to hear that. How did you know to give me that? I'm like, well, and it kind of evaluate the situation. Sometimes I might just say, I don't know, it just came to me, even though I do know what's going on and it happened. But oftentimes I'll be like, oh, actually, it's a message from your spirit guides. They wanted me to pass this along. And they're like, oh my God, thank you. And they're like crying and really enjoy it. And then there's other times when their spirit guides might come to me or their loved ones might come to me and wanted me to pass a message on, but I just don't feel like it. So I don't. I have free will as well. And I can exercise that free will. And I could choose not to. And I don't have to. There's no obligation where I feel I have to. I do it because I'm of service to mankind, and humankind, womankind, whatever. So I do it because I enjoy it, and I love helping people and supporting people and giving back to people and passing along messages to them. But I don't feel obligated to. And so you don't have to, because I've had people at 2 extremes, whereas they don't want to do it and they never do it, or they're afraid or whatever. And we talked about coming out of the closet, things like that. And they never, ever will do it, even though they're getting messages that they know they're supposed to pass along, but they're just too afraid to do it, or don't want to do it or whatever. And they never do it. Right. So that's not healthy either. But then there's the other extremes. I've seen some of my clients and people I've come across where they feel obligated, where all the time they have to. No, you don't. You don't have to always communicate with other people's spirit guides, other people's loved ones, with random strangers, or maybe even their friends or family members. But you don't have to necessarily always pass along messages and give readings and stuff like that. I choose to most of the time, but there are times when I'm just not in the mood and don't want to, and I just don't. And I'm okay with that. And my spirit guides are okay with that. So that's really important. Welcome to the Ask Ken Show. This is the Ask Ken Show. If you're watching, please say your name, and I will give you your name and where you're from, and I will give you a shout out. And we have Cynthia from Nova Scotia. Woo woo. I think she's going to be taking my channeling workshops very soon. And Yeah, let's go on to the next question. This is so exciting. These are great questions. I love them. Thank you for everyone who's participating, and thank you for making the Ask Ken show amazing, because this is how it works, is by watching and you participating. It's what makes these questions so good and fun. And these are really like tough questions. The ones I'm going through, like this is not your average kind of questions. Um, but being an empath is actually a really good thing. Like a lot of people think being an empath is a bad thing, but when you learn how to harness these abilities, like I said, there's only about 1 in 10 people on this planet that are empaths. And it doesn't make us better than them or worse than, none of that. So please don't go into that ego tripping kind of stuff. We don't need to do that. But when we learn how to harness, and we're healthy empaths and we could do amazing things with our empathic abilities, like there's so many things that, in so many ways that you can help yourself, and so many things in so many ways that you can help others by being a healthy empath. So please, 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 if you are very sensitive to other people, other situations, other circumstances, please do your healing and clearing on that and take ownership of it. And oh yeah, and I was going to talk about lost souls. So we have the 5 different kinds of souls that are in the ash realm, but then we also have ones that are not of the light. Those are what are called lost souls, and those are the ones that reside in the in-between realm. So they have not fully crossed over yet. And so what I do with them is I deal with them promptly. I do not interact with them. I do not take their advice. I do not communicate with them or fellowship with them. Please, please, please. That's very dangerous. They can mess you up, and it's kind of like hanging out with a gangster and thinking that they're all good and got your back, but they're just manipulating you and trying to twist the facts or get you to do things. So let me make it very clear with lost souls is there's a whole wide range of lost souls and different kinds of lost souls. They're not all the same. Some are benign and harmless, and they don't even know that they're lost, or maybe they do know but they don't know how to cross over, so you just help them cross over, and then they're good, they're fine. But there's ones that are really not of the light, on the dark side, and those ones you do not mess with. They can really screw you up and mess with your life, and it's happened to me. It's happened to some of my clients. And you'll notice them and be able to identify them because they're really low vibration. They are I keep saying the term not of the light on purpose, because when you feel into them, you'll notice that there's an absence of light. Whereas these ones on this side that are in the ashram that have crossed over, they're vibrant, they're bright, they'll never do anything negative to hurt you or harm you. These ones might, especially the ones way on this end of the scale of the spectrum. So just be careful with those ones and deal with them promptly. Get rid of them, get them out of your life. Don't even converse with them. And then there's more advanced techniques I teach my students on how to handle them so that they'll never bother anyone ever again, things like that. So it's really, really important topic. And a lot of people, they think, like, I get this quite frequently where people will say, oh, don't do that channeling because it's going to open you up to things that are not of the light and things that are of the dark, and you're going to open yourself up to all this demonic activity and all that. And I'm like, guess what? We all channel already anyways. All of us channel. Every single person on this planet channels. It's impossible not to channel. We're all spiritually connected to some capacity. And the thing is, we just don't know it. Most of us don't know that, how connected we are, or that we are even connected. And so we're constantly getting information from other sources, like our spirit guides or one of these other kinds of souls, or maybe sometimes things that are not of the light. But how do we know the difference? And that's where actually taking formal channeling training comes in, so that you can discern the difference. And then if something is not of the light, you can definitely not listen to them, but also deal with them promptly and properly, so that they won't affect you or anyone else ever again. And then only channel and work with souls and beings that are of the light. Only work with them, hence the term light worker. I only want my students to work with souls are being in the light. Be a light worker. Okay, so don't dabble in this stuff. Don't play with this stuff. And it's not that these people who say, oh, don't do channeling because it's not safe, it's dangerous, all this and that. It's not that they're not wrong. That there is some truth to what they're saying. What they don't know is the full spectrum. So there's two things. First of all, everyone's channeling, including them. The second thing is, if you don't actually learn what you're doing properly, you could be channeling something that's not of the light inadvertently, not knowing that's what you're doing, which happened to me in my early days. And instead, why not take formal training so you actually learn about this stuff so that you know how to discern the difference between what's not of the light and what is of the light, so you can always work with souls and beings that are of the light. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. Channeling is safe when you know how to do it properly. It's kind of like using a tool like a power saw. Power saws are totally safe. And when you learn how to use it and use it properly, you can do amazing things with it. You can build amazing things with it and do crazy cool things with it. But you have to know what you're doing with it, right? Same thing with channeling. So learn what you're doing, learn how to do it properly, safely, and do it at really advanced high levels. So you can do some really cool kick-ass things with channeling, because you can. It's totally life transforming and life changing. All right. Next question is, can your soul be held captive? And how can you free your soul? So the answer, I don't really like to get into this stuff too much, but I guess I will. Okay. Don't kid yourself. There is dark stuff to do with spirituality. So can your soul be held captive? I'm checking right now. I'm getting a yes. And it's happened to me a few times, not me doing it purposely, but me in my early years dabbling in stuff that was not of the light, but not knowing any better. It's called being naive. Naive isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, or ignorance isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just when you don't know what you don't know. And so at that time, I've been teaching people how to channel for 20 years, but in my early years, I didn't know any different. I was fumbling my way through this. I had no one to teach me how to do this. I had to figure it all out myself. And so there was times when these things that are not of the light would actually come in and override my soul and take over my soul, take over my body, and get me to do things that I didn't want to do, but I felt like I couldn't help myself because I literally couldn't. They actually some people talk about exorcisms and things like that. That's what I literally had to do to get this out of me. So these do exist. This can happen. So the question is, how can you free your soul? Okay, so there's a number of things here. So first thing I want to encourage my students to do is get to a point where this would never happen to you ever. And how do you do that? We talked about that earlier with the protection systems. So getting yourself healthy, so that, because what happens is these lost souls, or these things of the not of the light, they most of the time, they don't touch people that are working in the light, operating in the light as frequently, as much, because it's too much work, it's too much hassle, and they go for the easy, vulnerable, the easy targets. Okay, so let's say there's a rave going on, or a festival, and all these people are doing drugs and alcohol and all this other stuff, and all their systems, they're so messed up that they can barely stand, and they're tripping out and all that stuff, and their systems are compromised. So it's easy in that situation, which is why I recommend don't do that, please. It's easy for one of these souls or beings that are not of the light to come in and attack this person, do a spiritual attack on them, and attachment, and on and on and on. And they could really mess them up because they're vulnerable. They're susceptible. Their protection systems are down, kind of like on Star Trek, where they, shields up, Scotty, whatever. And then but the shields are, because they're on all these drugs and all that. Their shields or protection systems are basically compromised, and so it's easier for them to, they're an easy target, basically, is what happens. And so what I want my students to do is try to, again, raise your vibration, do your healing and clearing, keep working on everything. Every time I meet with students, whether it's one-on-one or in group settings, is I always do two things. I always do healing and clearing, and I always do any spiritual upgrades for this reason. And it's not that all spiritual upgrades are related to protection, but often they are. And the healing and clearing helps with protection. So does the spiritual upgrades, so that you're less susceptible or prone to attacks, prone to spiritual soul attachments, things like that. Does that make sense? We want to do preventative kind of action, preventative. It's kind of like doing maintenance on your car so that it doesn't break down. If you do regular maintenance on it, it's less likely to break down than if you never do any maintenance on it. is a great example. But also spiritual upgrades. So you're constantly enhancing and changing the parts in the car to a better quality, higher standards, and then they're even less likely to break down. Okay, or less likely to be susceptible to spiritual attacks. Another thing that's really important is, so how can I free my soul? So I developed this thing. It's called the expulsion command, and the expulsion command. So what happens is when you have a soul attachment, something that's not of the light that's affecting you detrimentally, and they've literally like grasped onto you. They're like latched on, and they won't onto your soul, onto your body, and your aspects. There's what's called the expulsion command, where you expel them from your presence, and you have to be very strong, very firm about it. And then once you expel them fully, then there's methods to cross them over into the light so that they'll never affect anyone else again. So I do teach that. I don't sugarcoat spirituality. I would say 90% of everything I teach is uh, how to work and operate in the light, but I do need to cover some certain topics that are not of the light so that people can identify it real quick, deal with it, and keep operating in the light. You don't want to hang out there, dwell there, dabble in that stuff. I know some people, I've had clients come to me and go, well, Ken, I know I'm not supposed to be operating in this stuff, but I keep getting drawn over to the dark side, if you want to call it. Like I keep getting drawn over, like I keep, and I'm like, okay. So what I like about these people is a lot of them times they're honest with me. They're like, I don't want to be, but I am. So what healing and clearing can I do inside? Can you help me with this? Can you help me heal this so I don't feel drawn to keep working and operating in the dark side? And I do that. I do the healing and clearing in them on that. So yeah, it's a process. And I know I've been there before where I feel like drawn to, I don't anymore. It's been a long, long, long time where I've felt like I don't even want anything to do with that stuff anymore, like at all. And I won't at all. I'm very, very, very firm about it. And I'm very firm about it with my students. Cynthia says hi from Nova Scotia. Hi, Cynthia. So this is the Ask Ken show. If you want to know more about my offerings, please visit my website, channelinginc.com. Everything that you are hearing about, I teach my students. So I'm not one of those people who have that scarcity mentality where, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to teach this. I'm going to keep this to myself because I'm special and all this. No, I'm the complete opposite. I want to teach you everything that I know so that you can do what I can do and even maybe at greater levels. And I want that. It's not about me. It's about making this world a better place by teaching people how to channel, which is my mission statement, which is why I'm here. And I want to teach you to be your own psychic and be empowered and know how to identify this stuff. Again, how to peel back the veil, understand the intricacies of what's going on the other side, and be able to access that and harness the amazing power of what you can do once you know what's going on and how to do amazing things with that and help you in all the areas of your life, not just one or two areas of your life, not just spirituality, but everything: relationships, work, career, health, and prosperity. And I could just go on and on and on. All right, let's go to the next question in the Ask Ken show, which is, should I connect with my soul on a daily basis? Absolutely. So your soul is the essential component that makes you up. Let me clarify here and go through some detail what your soul is. So your soul resides here in your sternum area, right? Like in that. So if you think of like your rib bones where they meet at the bottom, and at the bottom, that's where your soul resides. That's called the seat of your soul. And so you want to tune into your soul on a regular basis. And here's why: is because your soul is the component of what makes you up as a human. And what I do every single morning, there's not many things that I do. Like I try not to do too many rituals and all that other stuff, because I found, like in my early days of learning to channel, was I would constantly be, adding this ritual, adding this pattern, ritual thing. And next thing I knew, after about 5 years, I had so many things that I had to do every single day. It wasn't sustainable. So I teach this concept, which is called keeping it lean. Only doing what you need to do, nothing more, nothing less. What I do two things every morning when I wake up, and these are the only two things that I do as a ritual or habit. There's only two things I do every single morning. Is I put my hands on my soul, I smile, I look down with my eyes, and I say, I love you to my soul every single morning. I love you. I love you, Ken. And I do this because self-love is, in my opinion, the most important thing that we can do in this lifetime to help us be healthier. When I love myself so much and my self-love is overflowing, things on the outside don't seem to bother me as much. I'm raising my vibration to attract those good people, situations, circumstances into my life. And it all starts with self-love. So every single morning I put my hands on my soul before I get out of bed, before I go pee, before I do anything, and I say I love you. And I feel gratitude and love for myself, for my soul, for my environment, my life, all that stuff. The second thing that I do is I check who's around me for my spirit guides, and I tune into them and I channel my spirit guides in the morning, first thing before I get out of bed. It only takes about like 5 minutes, but I do that first thing in the morning for two reasons. One is I want to keep working on self love, telling myself I love you. There's something I teach called the mirror method. You can look in the mirror, tell yourself I love you, and that's really powerful. I do that even still to this day. And then the other thing that I do is I channel my spirit guides first thing in the morning, because I want to get in the habit of connecting with them first thing in the morning, because I'm more likely to stay connected with them throughout the day, if that makes sense. So those are the two things that I do. But here's a bigger reason why it's really important to connect with your soul on a regular basis. So your soul, before you incarnate, I talked about this earlier, is before you incarnate, you work with ascended masters of your in your soul family to create what I call a rough blueprint of why you're here. Why you're here. So what's my purpose is. And notice I said purposes, plural, because it's not just one purpose. You didn't incarnate for just one reason, one purpose. You actually incarnated for many purposes. So I teach training. There's whole workshops I do around this one topic about your purpose, you finding your soul's purpose. And that's what you want to do. I just said it. Finding your soul's purpose. Why am I here? So if you connect and communicate with your soul on a regular basis, you are getting constant reminders of, oh, this is why I'm here. This is the many reasons why I'm here. This, like, on the path that I'm on, is it serving my soul's purpose? Is it in alignment with my soul's purpose? And then continue practicing channeling your soul and fellowshipping with your soul. So your soul is one of those really unique components of you where it's not really loud, it's not really in your face, it's not like going to scream at you or anything like that. It's what they call the quiet whisper of your soul. It's quieter, but you have to pay attention to it, feel into it, and really connect with it. And when you're actually aware of it and you pay attention to it, you will hear the guidance that it's trying to give you. You will hear those quiet whispers of the soul and follow it. Do your best to follow it. Like, really tune into your soul, love your soul, and fellowship with your soul, get to know your soul and everything beautiful about it, because it really is the most beautiful component of you that makes you up as a human. A little technique that you might want to try. I'm going to leave the Ask Ken show with this. So if you're listening, I'm going to get you to write this down if you can, or take notes in your phone or something like this. And this is going to be a practice, your homework, until the next Ask Ken show. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is do this. Every time you see a person, whether it's on the street, in a car, at the grocery store, wherever it might be, doesn't matter. Just whenever you see another person, maybe it's a family member you'll see later today or whatever, or tomorrow at work, whatever it might be. I want you to practice this. I want you to look at that person, but look past the facade. Look past the container, their body, their face, all that stuff. Look past all that. And instead look at this part of their body and look at their soul, and look and observe them spiritually on how beautiful of a soul they are, just trying their best in this current incarnation. And so the reason why I do this is, there's a number of reasons why I encourage my students to do this, is because as you start to do this regularly, first thing that'll happen is all the judgment will fade away, because you don't see the person, like as an overweight person, or this color skin person, or an underweight person, or, you know, a this race, this culture, this demographics, this sex, or whatever it is. You don't see any of that. Instead, you just see them as a beautiful soul, because all that stuff I just mentioned is temporary. Like, we've all been different races in our life, different lifetimes. We've all been different sexes, different demographics, all that other stuff, different body types in many different lifetimes. But when you see them on a soul level, you start to see the true essence of who they are. And then all judgment fades away. But then when you practice this, as you practice this for months and eventually years, is then what happens is you start to realize that we're all just these beautiful, amazing souls, and I'm one of them. And now I can start to see myself as this beautiful, amazing soul, not this physical body container that I am, not these hangups or hindrances or shortcomings that I have, but instead as this beautiful soul, just trying my best in this current incarnation. So try this. Try this. Next time you're out in public, next time you're at the mall or you're in a group setting, instead just look at everyone and smile and look at all these beautiful souls, not people, souls. Look past all the facade, the faces, the masks, all that other stuff, the containers, and look past all that. Let all that melt away and just look at all these beautiful souls in your presence. And then when you, in the morning, when you say, I love you to your own, this is not me. This, like it is, but it's not, right? This is temporary, but my soul is eternal. And when I feel into my soul, and I'm doing this with others, and I'm looking into their soul and feeling how beautiful and amazing they are. Can I also do this for myself? So thank you everyone for watching. This is the Ask Ken show. If you have any questions, comments, if you have any questions that you would like me to ask on a future Ask Ken show, just send me a message and I can add that to my list of questions to ask eventually, get to it. If you have any, would like to attend any of my workshops, my trainings, I do all sorts of like animal communication trainings, channeling trainings, formal channeling trainings. I also have what's called the Ascension Group Healing, where I heal whole groups at a time. So those of you who feel you need some healing and clearing, please feel free to attend those. And also feel free to book a one-on-one. My name's Ken. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.